Hello students, I welcome you all to a new session of SMMC, that is Static Mains Marathon class. And in this particular session of SMMC, we will be talking about certain historical topics which are very important from the examination point of view. Okay, so let's get started. The session is going to be very interesting, I can guarantee you that. So these are the topics, okay, these are the topics which we are going to cover today. These are the topics which we are going to cover, okay, and the name of the topics, okay, the name of the topics are, number one, as you can see, that the second phase of urbanization, okay, second phase of urbanization, that is age of Mahajanapadas. Then Kautilya's Saptang theory, okay, Kautilya's Saptang theory. Then we have for you foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire, okay, we have for you the foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire. Then we also have for you another very interesting topic, that is Lord Lytton, okay, he was one of the Governor Generals of India. Then extremist phase of Indian National Congress, or the extremist phase of INC or Indian National Congress. Then the carrot and stick approach, okay, this is another topic which we will be covering today. And last but not the least, struggle-truce-struggle strategy of Gandhi. Okay, so these are the topics which we have in store for you today. See, the first topic, okay, the first topic, that is the second phase of urbanization, age of Mahajanapadas. So in this particular topic, second phase of urbanization, age of Mahajanapadas, okay, age of Mahajanapadas, we will be talking about the factors, okay, we will be talking about the factors which led to the growth of this urbanized culture during the period, okay, during this particular period. What led to the growth, or what led to the growth of urban features, what led to the growth of urban features during this particular period? We will focus on that aspect, okay, we will focus on that aspect. So before, first of all, let me tell you the meaning of, what do we mean by age of Mahajanapadas? Which period are we talking about? Okay, which period are we talking about? So it roughly, okay, age of Mahajanapadas, roughly, it roughly started from around, you can say that roughly it started from around 600 BC, okay, or roughly it started from around 600 BCE, and it lasted, okay, it lasted till about, let's say it lasted till about 300 BCE, okay, it lasted till about 300 BCE, and these years are known in history as age of Mahajanapadas, which came after what? Which came after the end of what? Which came after the end of the later Vedic age, okay, which came after the end of the later Vedic age. Now, before going further, you also have to know the geographical region, because history and geography are two subjects, or two such subjects which go hand in hand, which are interconnected, which are very close to each other. So we have to know the geography of this particular place, okay. We also we have to know the geography of this particular place. So which is the place we are talking about? Which is the geographical region that we are talking about? So the geographical region that we are talking about, okay, the geographical region that we are talking about is the Middle Gangetic Plain. So what do I mean when I say Middle Gangetic Plain? What is the meaning of Middle Gangetic Plain? See, the Gangetic Basin, okay, the basin or the valley or the basin formed by the river Ganga can be divided into three parts: Upper Gangetic Plains, okay, Upper Gangetic Plains, Middle Gangetic Plains, and Lower Gangetic Plains. Upper Gangetic Plain starts right from the mouth of the Ganga and it comes all the way till Allahabad, okay, which has now become Prayagraj, okay, it ends there. From Prayagraj or Allahabad starts the Middle Gangetic Plain and it goes up till Patna, and from Patna, okay, from Patna till, let's say, till the mouth of the Ganga, okay, from Patna till the point Ganga, not exactly mouth, but from Patna till the point Ganga drains into Bay of Bengal, okay, the entire area is known as what? Lower Gangetic Plains. So now, because we are talking about age of Mahajanapadas, so age of Mahajanapada, this period mostly flourished, okay, I'm using the word mostly. This period mostly flourished in the Middle Gangetic Plains. That is to say, from Allahabad till Patna. It is in this area that we get to hear about most of the Mahajanapadas. Now, let's focus on the word Mahajanapadas. See, Janpad, okay, First and foremost, we get to hear of this word Janpad during the later Vedic phase. We also get to hear of words such as Rashtra during the later Vedic phase. So we can say, based on these two words, we can say that the concept, okay, the meaning of Janpad means what? Janpad. Okay, Jana means what? Jana means tribe, and Pad means foot. So the place where a particular tribe sets its feet, or the place where a particular tribe sets its feet, comes to be known as Janpad. Okay, so the culture of Janpad had started from the later Vedic phase itself, but now we are talking about Mahajanpad. So as we all know, Maha means the literal meaning of the word Maha is what? Great. Okay, the literal meaning of the word Maha is great. So now basically we are saying that the Janpad which had started during the later Vedic period, now those, now the culture of Janpad has become larger and mightier. Now the Janpads, okay, the Janpad, we get to hear of larger or bigger Janpads during the age of Mahajanapadas. Okay, during the later Vedic period, there were some other small kingdoms. Okay, there were some other small kingdoms like Kuru, Panchal and all that. But now we get to hear of how many Mahajanapadas. Okay, Mahajanapadas, they are in simple words. Okay, in simple words, we can also call them big kingdoms. Okay, in simple words, we can also call them big kingdoms. And these, how, according to Buddhist scriptures and Jain scriptures, okay, according to Buddhist scriptures like Anguttara Nikaya and Jain scripture like Bhagavati Sutra, there were as many as 16 Mahajanapadas. Now in this particular topic, we are not going to talk about all the 16 Mahajanapadas, and we all know eventually Magad became the most powerful of all the Mahajanapadas. Magad corresponds with a substantial portion of the modern day state of Bihar, but that's a separate thing. Okay, today we will be talking about the factors. Okay, we will be talking about the factors because of which age of Mahajanapadas is also known as what? Second phase of urbanization. Why second phase of urbanization? Because we have already come across the first phase of urbanization during Indus Valley civilization. During the mature phase of Harappan civilization or Indus Valley civilization, we got to hear about the first phase of urbanization. And now we will be talking about the second phase of urbanization. And we all know the meaning of urbanization. Urbanization, it refers to that time period when we will once again get to hear of the emergence of towns and cities, and urban culture will come to the fore. Okay, now let's focus on the reasons. What exactly were the reasons? See, first and foremost, you have to know one thing. And I think I have talked about this in one of my previous YouTube sessions also, that there have to be certain preconditions. There have to be certain prerequisites for the emergence of an urban culture. Urban culture hoar karone kisuman agor pora condition thakibo lagibo. Okay, certain prerequisites have to be there for the emergence of an urban culture. Ebilak prerequisites nathakile urban culture ketia utpanno hobo nware. Now, so why do we not talk about, or why do we do not associate the Vedic age with urbanization? Why only this age? Something has to happen during this time. So what exactly happened? Number one, see, iron was already discovered during the later Vedic age. Okay, iron was already discovered during the later Vedic age. Around 1000 BCE, iron was already discovered. Okay, it was discovered in several sites, like for example Atranji Khera in Uttar Pradesh. So iron was discovered. As far as discovery of iron is concerned, it was discovered, we can say with utmost certainty, that iron was discovered around, although certain new researches, okay, certain new researches or certain new findings point out to the fact that iron was discovered much earlier. But in this particular session, as of now, we have to go by what the most standard books, okay, what most of the standard books say. Okay, we have to stick to that. So according to most of the historians, according to most of the standard books, they say that iron was discovered around 1000 BCE. So 1000 BCE corresponds with the time period of the later Vedic age. Now what happened during the age of Mahajanapadas? Iron has been discovered already. But what is the difference? Although iron was being discovered during the later Vedic period, people were not using iron implements in the domain of agriculture. They were using iron tools for different purpose. Okay, for example, they were using iron to make weapons of war. Okay, they were using irons to make weapons of war. But from the age of Mahajanapadas, okay, from the time of the age of Mahajanapadas, people will start using tools made of iron. Okay, people will start using tools made of iron in agriculture. Okay, as a result of which, and what do they make of iron? They make certain agricultural tools, like for example iron hoe and iron plowshare. What is the meaning of iron hoe? Amizak kur buliko. Kuddal, okay, that is the word we get to hear. Okay, that is the word we get to hear from the text belonging to this particular period of time, that is age of Mahajanapadas. Age of Mahajanapadas or Kisuman Hekini Homoyot, Likha Kisuman Kitabot, we come across a term by the name of Kuddal, Kuddala. Amize etia kur buliko. Okay, so it seems that the word kur, okay, which we use to indicate hoe, it seems to have come out of this particular word kuddal. Okay, so because this word has been used in that time period, it means that people were actually using kuddal, iron hoe. Iron hoe was used in agriculture. At the same time, iron plowshare. Okay, iron plowshare meaning that part. Okay, I'm talking about that part of, you know, that part of what? That part of a you know, hull. Okay, in Hindi we call it hull, or tomar অসমীয়াত আমি কি কওঁ হাল বুলি কওঁ ঠিক আছে so the bottommost part of a hull, okay, the bottommost part of a hull. Before this, okay, now before this the people were using what? The people were using wood at the bottommost part of a hull, and the bottommost part of a hull is that part of a hull which comes into contact with the soil. That does the job of tilling the soil. So the bottommost part of a hull is very, very important. So prior to this period, people were using wood. Okay, in the bottommost part of the hull, people were using wood because people were also doing agriculture during later Vedic period. Okay, we already know about that. So they were using wood. But now they have started using iron, and we all know the benefits of using iron in that particular part, and that is known as what? Iron plowshare. The moment they started using iron, agriculture became better. Agricultural production, okay, it got better and better. Okay, so and on top of that, they were also using iron hoe. So basically, in simple words, they started using iron implements in the domain of agriculture from this particular time period. Okay, on top of that, so what did they gain out of the use of iron implements in agriculture? They witnessed what? They witnessed agricultural surplus. Okay, on top of that, they also started wet paddy cultivation from this time period onwards. They started wet paddy cultivation, or in simple words, they started wet rice cultivation or rice cultivation from this time period onwards. People prior to this period were not cultivating rice, they were more into wheat cultivation. And you know, recent researchers have shown that, okay, if you compare between, recent researchers have shown that per acre yield, okay, if you compare wheat cultivation with rice cultivation, you will see that per acre yield of rice, per acre yield mane ki output, per acre yield or output of rice is more than per acre yield of wheat. So এতিয়া যে মানুহবিলাকে start কৰিছে তোমাৰ rice cultivate কৰা যে আৰম্ভ কৰিবলৈ তাহাঁতে start কৰিলে, it led to what? Agricultural surplus. And we all know agricultural surplus is one of the most important prerequisites for the development of an urban culture. Okay, one of the most important prerequisites is what? Agricultural surplus for the development, okay, for the development of an urban culture. Did you get it? Then after that, okay, so see, these were the prerequisites that I was talking about. Okay, these were the prerequisites that I was talking about. Now other than that, at the same time we also have to realize another thing, and that another thing is what? See, we are trying to link what? We are trying to link age of Mahajanapadas with urbanization. Okay, we are trying to link age of Mahajanapadas with urbanization, and because we are trying to link it, we need to be more specific about the urban features. Now let's talk about another very important urban feature. See, how can we say that second phase of urbanization, or how can we say that age of Mahajanapadas was an, it was a time when urbanization was happening? How can we say that? Because we have also found, okay, another thing which can be linked with urbanization is what? We have found a special kind of pottery by the name of NBPW, that is Northern Black Polished Ware. This pottery, okay, this pottery belongs to this time period, okay, and we have found this pottery, okay, we have found the remains of this pottery from different Mahajanapadas, okay. In total there are 16 Mahajanapadas, I've told you already, and so we have found the remains of this pottery from different Mahajanapadas. And is a pottery to the discovered course of our findings below. It is a very special kind of a pottery. What makes it special is what? What makes it special is a particular gloss or a particular shine. Okay, this pottery has a particular shine to it. This pottery has a particular shine to it, which makes it what? According to scholars, because it had a particular shine or a gloss. Okay, it had a certain kind of a polish. According to scholars, that has led these scholars to conclude that this pottery must have been what? This pottery must have been an expensive pottery. Because this pottery was an expensive pottery, it indicates what? It indicates towards the existence of social stratification, rich-poor divide. And rich-poor divide is a feature of an urban culture. It is not the feature of a rural culture. ঠিক আছে, যোনটো ধনী দুখীয়াৰ gap, it is seen more in towns and cities in comparison to villages. So this is another thing which proves that age of Mahajanapadas, okay, wasn't, it was a time when urbanization was happening. On top of that, okay, there were many cities, okay, there were also cities by the name of Kaushambi. Kaushambi itself was not a Mahajanapada, it was a very important city. And we have found what? We have found remains of ramparts. Okay, we have found remains of forts and ramparts, okay, Kaushambi. So these remains, or whatever we have found, whatever we have discovered, it also indicates towards the fact that it was an urbanized culture. On top of that, okay, it was during this period that we get to hear of too. It was during this particular period that, see, another very important feature of an urban culture is what? Trade. Okay, trade has to happen. How can we say that trade was happening? Because we get to hear of two routes for the very first time. We get to hear of two routes for the very first time, Uttar Path and Dakshin Path. Now different authors have given different routes for these two paths, but in simple words, these two paths, see, according to certain scholars, both the routes started from somewhere around Magadh, okay, from somewhere around modern day state of Bihar, okay, and one of these routes, it went all the way till Gandhar, okay, it went all the way till Gandhar, which was again a very important Mahajanapada. And the other route, okay, the other route it went till, okay, the other route it went till Avanti. Okay, where was Avanti located? One of the capitals of Avanti was Ujjain. So Ujjain is in Maharashtra. So I'm so sorry, Ujjain is in Madhya Pradesh. So Avanti was somewhere there. I mean, the other capital of Avanti, the southern capital of Avanti was, okay, the southern capital of Avanti was what? Okay, that's a homework for you. Okay, find out the southern capital of Avanti. Okay, find out the southern capital of Avanti, or let me share it. Okay, let me share the name of the capital with you right away, because the name is very interesting. Mahishmati. Okay, what was Mahishmati? Mahishmati was a word, or Mahishmati is a word which has been immaterialized, which has been eternalized. Okay, immortalized. Okay, Mahishmati is a word which has been eternalized by the famous or the iconic movie Bahubali. So that where did they get the word Mahishmati from? Mahishmati was the southern capital of Ujjain. Okay, it was the southern capital of Avanti. And okay, what I was saying a few minutes ago, that Dakshin Path, okay, Dakshin mane ki southern, okay, southern route. So the southern route or the Dakshin Path started from Magadh and it came all the way till Avanti. And there are many scholars who also say that from Avanti, okay, from Avanti, that route did not end in Avanti, but it was connected from Avanti to the Bhrigukach port, okay, to the port of Bhrigukach, which is in Gujarat. And Bhrigukach port is one of the oldest ports of India, okay, because ultimately trade was happening. So it indicates that goods which used to travel along this route were finally exported to other kingdoms, were finally exported to other foreign kingdoms from the Bhrigukach port. Okay, from the Bhrigukach port on one side. So a similar thing must have also happened towards the eastern side. So according to scholars, the from Magad was also well connected to a port. Okay, Magad was also well connected to an eastern port, and the name of that port is Tamaralipti. It was one of the ancient ports of Bengal. Okay, Tamaralipti. So Magad was also well connected to a port. Okay, and Tumar Avanti was also well connected to a port. Okay, Avanti was connected to Bhrigukach, okay, which later came to be known as Barigaza, or which today is popular as what? Bharuch. Okay, and Magad was also connected to another port by the name of Tamaralipti. All these things indicate that age of Mahajanapadas was a phase when India witnessed the second phase of what? Urbanization. Okay, then going forward, see, Kautilya Saptang theory and important officers in administration. Kautilya Saptang theory has been a subject of it has been a subject of a lot of speculation for long. Okay, Kautilya Saptang theory is very, very interesting. What makes it even more interesting is what? What makes it even more interesting is the fact that this theory is relevant even today. This theory is relevant even today. So what is the meaning of Saptang theory? What are these? Okay, what are these things which what are these things which Kautilya is talking about? So basically Kautilya is talking about what? Basically Kautilya or Chanakya or Vishnugupta, he has got three names. Although according to many scholars, all these three persons, they were three different persons. All these three names. Okay, according to there are many scholars who tell us, or there are many scholars who are of the opinion that these three names refer to three different persons. But the most accepted view is what? The most accepted view is that all these three names belong to one person. So let's stick with Kautilya. So he is basically talking about what? He is basically talking about 7 organs. He is basically talking about 7 organs of a state or a kingdom, or let's say a country. He is basically talking about the 7 organs of a country or a kingdom without which that particular kingdom will not be able to function properly. Okay, so let's get started. See, first and foremost, he talks about Swamin or Swami. Okay, he's right at the center. Okay, he's right at the center. Swami or king. That is, if you have to talk about it in if you have to talk about the position of Swami in modern terminology, let's say, and if we have to talk about India, let's say Prime Minister of India. Okay, let's say Prime Minister of India is the Swami. Okay, let's say he's the Swami. So because Kautilya was a part of, or he was a part of the monarchical system, so he used the word Swami and he indicated king. So he's right at the center. Okay, Swami. Now Amaitya. Okay, Amaitya means what? Amaitya basically means ministers or high officials. Amaitya. Okay, Kautilya in Arthashastra, he tells us that no matter how powerful a king is, no matter how efficient or wise a king is, he has to take the support, he has to consult, okay, before arriving at a major conclusion or before taking any important decision, he has to consult with his ministers and close associates. Okay, Kautilya himself tells us. And we can compare Amaitya with Council of Ministers or the cabinet ministers of the 21st century. Okay, then Janpad. Okay, Janpad is one of the most important parts of the Saptang theory. Janpad means what? The people or the territory. Okay, if there are no people or if there is no territory, okay, there will be no state. Okay, and in fact, talking from the point of view of political science, okay, there are certain characteristics which make up a state, and one of those characteristics is that state has to have what? State has to have people. State has to have people. So a very, very relevant point. Then Durga. Okay, Durga. It meant what? D-U-R-G-A. Durg or Durga. Okay, Durg. Durg meant what? Fort. Fort. So basically, Kautilya is talking about, he talks about fort because during those times, okay, during those times, the fort, or you know, the capital of the kingdom had to be well protected. The capital of the kingdom had to be well protected. So this is something which is connected with the defense of a country. And we still know, okay, we still know how important it is to defend the boundaries of a country. How important it is to defend the boundaries of India, we still know that, okay. We have got two hostile neighbors. One is Pakistan, the other is China, who are giving us a lot of trouble, who keep on giving us a lot of trouble from time to time. And we are also having, so many border disputes, both with China as well as Pakistan. So it makes, and because of which India has been spending a lot of money in the name of defense. Okay, India has been allocating a huge sum of money in the budget for defense. Okay, so defense is very, very important. Kosha, treasury, okay. So treasury is very, very important. So by treasury, Kautilya is simply talking about what? A most important part of what? Public finance. What is the meaning of public finance? Although public finance involves both what? Expenditure as well as income. But here I will focus more on income. Okay, see, for example, the most important source of revenue for the government is what? Taxation. And taxation is one of the oldest forms of revenue for the government. Oldest, it has been going on since time immemorial. And taxation is said to have started, a certain kind of taxation seems to have started from the Vedic period itself. Although initially it was voluntary, okay, later during the later Vedic period it became compulsory. That's a different thing. But you know, a certain kind of taxation seems to have started from that particular period itself, a rudimentary form of taxation. So now Kautilya again is talking about treasury. And where will money come from treasury? Obviously taxes. Obviously taxes. I mean, there are other reasons. I mean, there are other ways to fill, there are other ways to fill your treasury, but collecting taxes on a regular basis is one of the most important things, or is one of the most important functions of a state or a government. And Kautilya, in Arthashastra, he tells the government or the king to tax or to introduce as many taxes as possible. Okay, to introduce as many taxes as possible. He also talks about a special tax. He also talks about a special tax by the name of Pranay, which he considers to be an emergency tax. See, Kautilya, why does he think that tax collection is very, very important? Because he goes on to say that if the government does not collect tax, if the government does not collect tax, how will the government spend that, how will the government work, or how will the government work for the welfare of the people? Because in order to work for the welfare of the people, you need money. And if you do not have taxes, if you do not collect taxes, where else will you get the money from? So Kautilya is advising the government or the king to introduce as many taxes as possible, so that that particular government or that particular king can do their bit for the welfare of the people. They can invest in welfare schemes, which Kautilya calls for Jan Parivesh. And Kautilya again says that if a particular government or if a particular king does not invest enough money for the welfare of the people, a time will come when something called Jan Prakop happen. Okay, a time will come when something like Jan Prakop will happen. What is the meaning of Jan Prakop? Protest or rebellion. So Kautilya is trying to give a warning to the king that if you do not want to come across, or if you do not want to face an unpleasant situation like Jan Prakop, make sure that you are investing a lot of money for the welfare of the people, and for that you need to collect taxes on a regular basis. Okay, and then obviously Mitra. Okay, then obviously a friend is very much needed for a particular country. Okay, we all know that recently, okay, even now as we talk, okay, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been visiting many countries. Okay, he has recently visited Australia, Japan, and is flying to many countries. Okay, he's flying to build, he's flying to many countries in order to build a good rapport with the heads of those particular states. Why? Because we all need friends. Okay, we all need friends. Just like the individuals, okay, just like the individuals need friends, a country or a state also needs friends. Okay, so all these things, in conclusion, what can we say? Everything is relevant even today. Everything is relevant even today, and which is why we talk about Saptang theory. Okay, which is why we haven't forgotten the Saptang theory. And Saptang theory, and there is another theory. Okay, there is another theory which is attributed to Kautilya, and the name of that theory is Mandala theory. Okay, and Raja Mandala or Mandala theory, you guys won't believe that this theory has been shaping India's foreign policy since a long time. I mean, there are many ways, okay? There are many factors shaping India's foreign policy, but this particular Raja Mandala or the Mandala theory of Kautilya has been shaping India's foreign policy since a long time. Okay? See, then let's talk about the foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire. Okay, foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire. Just like India has got a foreign policy, okay, just like India has got a foreign policy, and India's foreign policy, it can be different, okay, it can be different, or India's foreign policy can vary, okay, it can vary with a different country. ठीक है से, India's foreign policy can be different with different countries. That's a different thing, okay? And there are also many examples, okay? There are also many examples of India having a consistent foreign policy. Like, for example, for many years, India was one of the biggest proponents of what? Non-alignment, okay? Which we also call NAM, non-alignment movement, okay? Then, for example, there are many such things, okay? There are many such things, for example, there's a very famous doctrine in international relations, okay, which is considered very important in the realm of international relations, which goes by the name of Gujarat Doctrine. So all these things are what? All these things go on to shape India's foreign policy. So similarly, Mauryan Empire also has a foreign policy. Every kingdom needs to have a foreign policy, but the foreign policy of Mauryan Empire, it makes for something very interesting. See, broadly speaking, okay, the foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire, okay, the foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire can be divided into two parts based on what? It can be divided into two parts based on the Battle of Kalinga, okay. It can be divided into two parts based on the Battle of Kalinga, which was fought somewhere around 261 to 262 BCE. We all know Kalinga corresponds with the modern day state of Odisha, okay. So, and we all know what happened in the Battle of Kalinga. It was the Battle of Kalinga which, according to many scholars, was the turning point. It proved to be the turning point in the life of Ashok or Ashoka. Okay, so let's divide Mauryan foreign policy based on the Battle of Kalinga. And if we do that, okay, if we adopt that strategy, so there will be two parts of the Mauryan foreign policy. Okay, one is what? One is pre-Kalinga and the other is post-Kalinga. Okay, one is pre-Kalinga and the other is post-Kalinga. Now, if we talk about the pre-Kalinga, okay, if we talk about the pre-Kalinga Mauryan foreign policy, pre-Kalinga Mauryan foreign policy was all about what? It was all about Bheri Ghosha. Okay, what is the meaning of Bheri Ghosha? Bhedigosha. Bheri Ghosha means, the literal meaning of Bheri Ghosha is sound of war. Okay, sound of what? War. Sound of war. In simple words, what does this word mean? It tries to tell us that before the Battle of Kalinga, okay, before the Battle of Kalinga, all the Mauryan kings, okay, all the Mauryan kings, including Ashoka, okay, be it Chandragupta Maurya, be it his son, or be it Ashoka, all the Mauryan kings were trying to what? They were trying to expand the territories of the Mauryan Empire. They were trying to expand the boundaries or territories of the Mauryan Empire by following a policy of what? By following a policy of force and aggression. In simple words, by following a policy of force and aggression. Okay, let's you can also give the example of the war that took place between Chandragupta Maurya and Seleucus Nicator. Okay, after that particular war, a treaty was being signed. Okay, and that is how huge parts of northwestern, huge parts of northwest India, huge parts of northwest India came under the control of the Mauryan Empire. So Ashoka also, he was able to annex what? He was able to annex Kalinga. Okay, he was able to annex Kalinga, and after annexation of Kalinga, he was able to include Kalinga in a separate province by the name of Toshala. Okay, he created a separate province by the name of Toshala, which included Kalinga. So Kalinga was annexed. But all that was happening before the Battle of Kalinga, or till the Battle of Kalinga. Now let's talk about deep changes or far-reaching changes took place after the Battle of Kalinga. Okay, because of which we call this foreign policy as what? Post-Kalinga. Okay, post-Kalinga, when we talk about post-Kalinga, now in this particular phase, in this particular phase, Bheri Ghosha was replaced by Dhamma Ghosha. Okay, as we all know, Ashoka was deeply touched. Okay, as we all know, the Battle of Kalinga had a deep and lasting impression on the heart and mind of Ashoka. Okay, and that also is said to have brought about a change of heart in Ashoka. I mean, of course, Ashoka did not become a Buddhist right away. He had to wait for 2 long years after the Battle of Kalinga before embracing Buddhism. But even before he did that, he was contemplating a lot on whether annexing Kalinga, whether killing so many people, because many people, hundreds and thousands of people were killed in the Battle of Kalinga. Okay, so he was hit hard by what? He was hit hard by pangs of remorse. He was regretting a lot. Okay, he was regretting a lot, and after 2 years he accepted Buddhism, and we all know that his relationship with Buddhism was very deep. Okay, so now his life began to be governed. Okay, he began to lead a life. Okay, he began to lead a life. He started taking inspiration from the teachings and life of Gautam Buddha, and that got reflected in the foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire also. That got reflected in the foreign policy of the Mauryan Empire after the Battle of Kalinga. So now Bheri Ghosha has been replaced by what? Dhamma Ghosha. Okay, Dhamma Ghosha means what? Cultural conquest. Cultural conquest. The conquest will go on, but we will not conquer new areas through force and what? Through force and aggression. But we will conquer new areas. We will conquer new areas by winning the hearts of people living in those areas, by winning the hearts of the heads of the states, by winning the hearts. By winning the hearts means what? By propagating or by projecting how good we are, or by projecting the ideals, by projecting the teachings. Okay, by projecting our good teachings, we will try to inspire them, and by doing that, we will be extending our hegemony. And we all know there is a term by the name of cultural hegemony. It's all about hegemony. So hegemony, it may be a 20th century word, okay, given by Gramsci, okay, Antonio Gramsci. It may be a 20th century word given by Antonio Gramsci, but hegemony has always been there. It has always been one of the prime objectives of a kingdom, to extend what? To extend hegemony. Okay, to extend hegemony. So Ashoka is simply saying what? Okay, we will not stop extending hegemony. Okay, or we will not stop conquering new areas, but we will enter into new places, not by force or aggression, but by winning the hearts of those people. And in this particular context, we can also give the example of a king by the name of Antiochus, who was ruling. Okay, he was a contemporary of Ashoka, and he was ruling a part of Syria. Who was Antiochus? He was the son of Seleucus Nicator. Okay, he was ruling a part of Syria, and Ashoka started sending missionaries. Okay, Ashoka started sending expeditions, and Ashoka started sending expeditions to that particular king, and those expeditions were not expeditions of war, but those were what? Those were cultural proposals. Those were cultural outreaches. He tried to reach out to that king. He tried to give him the message of peace. He tried to give him the message of prosperity. Okay, and it was driven by the same spirit. Okay, driven by the same spirit, Ashoka also is said to have sent his daughter and son to Sri Lanka, which at that point in time was known as Ceylon. Okay, so this is the Mauryan foreign policy. Okay, the deciding factor is what? the dividing factor, I'm so sorry, the dividing factor is what? The dividing factor is the Battle of Kalinga. Okay? See, Lord Lytton. Okay, Lord Lytton, a very important Governor General. Okay, a very important Governor General, Lord Lytton. He's one of those Governor Generals. We need to know a few things. Okay, we need to know a few things. We need to know a few things about Lord Lytton first. Who was Lord Lytton? He was one of the Governor Generals. Okay, he probably became the Governor General of India around 1876, and he assumed power till around till around 1880. Okay, till around 1880. Now, Lord Lytton he was one such Governor General of India who was an imperialist. Now, what is the meaning of this word imperialist? Lord Lytton was an imperialist. And he was just following the orders of the then British Prime Minister. He was just following the orders of the then British Prime Minister by the name of Benjamin Disraeli, who was from the Conservative Party, who was also an imperialist. Now, what is the meaning of the word imperialist? Imperialist, as you all may have deciphered by now, it has to come from the word imperialism. So, imperialist, if I say that particular person is an imperialist, I mean that particular person considers himself or his culture to be superior than my culture, or he tries to justify. So imperialists are those people, and if we talk about British imperialists, because now we are talking about British imperialists, Lord Lytton was a British imperialist. Okay, he had no regrets. So he was of the opinion. Okay, he was of the opinion that Great Britain had every right to rule over India. Why? Because by ruling over India, it was trying to civilize the Indians. Okay, now this stems from the fact, this stems from the mentality. Okay, this stems from the fact that they considered what? People like Lord Lytton considered India and Indians to be inferior, or the culture or the civilization of India to be inferior to that of Great Britain. Okay, this is the meaning of imperialist. So he was one of the imperialists. Okay, there have been many imperialist Governor Generals. Okay, for example, Lord Curzon was another imperialist Governor General. Lord Elgin was another imperialist Governor General. Lord Elgin is the same Governor General who introduced what? Who inserted the controversial sedition provision. Okay, who introduced the controversial sedition provision to Indian Penal Code. Lord Lytton. Okay, he was that particular Governor General. So Lord Elgin was also an imperialist. Now, why Lord Lytton is particularly important? Because only of one thing. Because his actions. Okay, there were certain actions which were taken by Lord Lytton when he was the Governor General of India, and those actions are said to have had a direct impact on what? Those actions are said to have had a direct impact on the growth of nationalism in India. His certain actions had a direct impact on the growth, or it directly led to the growth of a nationalistic feeling among the Indians. His actions were so bad, his actions were so reactionary. We will be basically talking about certain reactionary policies of Lord Lytton, or certain reactionary decisions being taken by Lord Lytton when he was the Governor General of India. Okay, and everything he did, every decision he took, every policy he undertook, he was just following the orders of whom? He was just following the orders of the then British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, who was from the Conservative Party. Okay, now see, now what were those controversial, or what were those reactionary policies? First and foremost, during the time of Lord Lytton, there was a massive famine. See, famines had already started happening. Famines had already started happening under the British rule. There were many famines. Okay, if you study the entire British history, okay, if you study the entire British rule in India, you will come across many instances of famines which took the lives of so many Indians, hundreds and thousands of Indians. There have been many instances of famines, and most of these famines, you would be surprised to know that most of these famines are artificial famines. What is the meaning of artificial famines? See, famines can also be of two types. One, natural famines, and the other is artificial famines. Artificial famines are those famines which came into effect or which came into existence or which happened due to certain flawed decisions of the British. Due to certain flawed decisions, due to certain mistakes, okay, due to certain administrative mistakes, okay, due to certain wrong decisions being taken by the British. And in certain cases, they were least concerned about what would happen to Indians. Okay, which led to the death and starvation of so many Indians. Okay, famine. Now we are talking about one such famine. So out of all the famines that took place during the later half of the 19th century, that is the 1800s, okay, out of all the famines that took place during the later half of the 19th century, that is after 1850, out of all the famines, there was one particular famine which started from 1876 CE and it lasted till 1878 CE, and that particular famine affected peninsular India. Okay, it affected peninsular India very, very badly. Okay, because of which, okay, what is the meaning of peninsular India? Peninsular India is that part of India which is exposed to the oceans, okay, which is exposed to the three water bodies, okay, which is exposed to the three water bodies surrounding India on three of its sides. So this particular famine is known as the peninsular famine. Now, what is the importance of this famine? Okay, what is the importance of this famine? See, so many people were dying in India at that point in time. This peninsular famine was a massive famine. Okay, just before this, a couple of years back, two other famines had already taken place in India. One was Odisha famine, the other is Bihar famine. But even in comparison to those two famines, this was even bigger, this was even more dangerous, this was even more menacing. So many people had to die, But what was Lord Lytton doing? What did he do did he do something to control the situation? Absolutely not. He did not do anything. On the contrary, in 1877, in 1877 CE, what did he do? On the contrary, in 1877, Lord Lytton organized a grand darbar. Okay, he organized a grand darbar, and in this particular grand darbar, what was the occasion? Why did he do this? This grand darbar was organized to give the title of Kesar-e-Hind or Empress of India to the then Queen of Great Britain. Okay, so to commemorate the occasion, to celebrate the occasion, a grand darbar was organized. Okay, in which the Queen of Great Britain was given the title of Kesar-e-Hind or Empress of India. Just imagine when so many Indians, when hundreds and thousands of Indians were dying due to the devastating effects of famine. He was busy organizing a grand darbar, and that particular grand darbar was a show of what? That particular grand darbar was it was a vulgar display of wealth. It was an ostentatious display of wealth. Okay, it was a vulgar display of wealth. It was a vulgar display of wealth of the ruling classes of India. So when I say ruling classes of India, at that point in time, there were only two ruling classes. One was the British, the other was the princely states. And this particular attitude of Lord Lytton, was severely criticized. This particular attitude of Lord Lytton was severely criticized by the Vernacular Press Act. Okay, the attitude of the ruling class was severely criticized by the vernacular press. I'm so sorry, not act, by the vernacular press. What is the meaning of vernacular press? Regional media. Okay, this thing was being highlighted. This insensitive nature of the Indian ruling class. This insensitive nature, how insensitive a person has to be. This was highlighted. Okay, the vernacular press, it highlighted this particular insensitive nature of the ruling class, and it created awareness among the Indians. It created a lot of awareness among the Indians regarding what? Regarding the insensitivity of the British. Now, what did Lord Lytton do? Now, when all these reports were generating a tremendous amount of awareness among the Indians, see, the process of building, okay, the process of building of national consciousness had already started. Okay, so it was creating a lot of awareness. So Indians came to know about the cruelty of the British. So Indians came to know about this. So at that very moment, Lord Lytton decided to intervene. What did he do? He decided to take step against the vernacular media. And how did he do it? He introduced a law by the name of Vernacular Press Act of 1878. It was in 1878 that this law came into effect. 1878, he passed a law by the name of Vernacular Press Act of 1878. It also came to be known as Gagging Act, Gagging, gagging. So what is the meaning of gagging? Gagging means when you choke someone, when you are not letting someone speak. That particular development, that particular act is known as gagging. So because it was not letting the vernacular press speak as they wanted, this act or this law came to be known as Gagging Act of 1878. And what was this act all about? What was this law all about? What did he say under this act? Under this act, the British government entered into an agreement. They entered into an agreement with all the media houses. The British government entered into agreement. The media houses were made to sign bond or agreements. Their signatures were being taken, and so they entered into agreements. With the media houses that you will not report anything bad. Okay, you will not report against us. Okay, if you at all have to write, you will write in favor of us. You will not highlight our key. You will not highlight these things ever again. Okay, so an understanding was developed, and it was also said that if you do this, if you violate, or if you project us in the bad light, or if you highlight, or if ever these things get repeated, if you again show us in the bad light, then what would happen? Two things will happen. Number one, you will have to pay us the bond money. Okay, because when they entered into an agreement, they had agreed to pay a bond money in case of any violation. So you will have to pay us the bond money. So first they had to pay the bond money in case of any violation. If any media house violated the agreement, first they had to pay the bond money, and later the media houses were also seized. Okay, this is the controversial what? This is the controversial Vernacular Press Act of 1878, which of course was repealed by the very next Governor General by the name of Lord Ripon. That's a different thing. Okay, now talking about Lord Lytton, another very controversial law which was introduced by Lord Lytton, it was the Arms Act of 1878. In the same year, he brought about another act by the name of what? Arms Act of 1878. Now this was, this showed what? This once again highlighted the racial discrimination being done by the British. This once again highlighted the racial discrimination being promoted by the British. And what was this law all about? What was the Arms Act all about? Under this act, the Europeans, if any European wanted to carry a firearm, he did not have to have a license to carry a firearm. A European, he did not have to have a license to carry a firearm, but an Indian had to carry a license. An Indian had to carry a license if he wanted to carry a firearm. An Indian had to have a license. But on the contrary, Europeans, they did not need any license to carry firearms. Okay, just imagine. Now on top of that, Lord Lytton is the same person. Okay, Lord Lytton is the same person who reduced the maximum age, to enter into civil services examination from 21 to 19. Earlier the maximum age was 21. I mean, although the maximum age has been changed many times in British history, but prior to the time of Lord Lytton, the maximum age to enter into civil services was 21. Now he has brought it down further to only 19. And why did he do this? He did this to deter, he did this to demotivate, he did this to discourage the Indians from entering into civil services, because there were many Britishers who did not like the idea of Indians entering into civil services, Okay, so these were some of his controversial actions, or these were some of his controversial policies which led to a growth of nationalism, which led to the growth of Indian nationalism. And the immediate reason, and all this culminated in what? The growth of Indian nationalism is said to have culminated in the formation of Indian National Congress. The growth of Indian nationalism which had started, it culminated or it ended with the formation of Indian National Congress. And another very interesting development which happened during the Governor Generalship of Lord Ripon. Okay, Lord Ripon was anyway a very good Governor General, because when he became the Governor General of India, at that time the Labour Party was in power in United Kingdom, and in comparison to the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, whenever Labour Party comes to power, it sympathizes, it sympathizes with most of the demands of Indians. Okay, it often, not always obviously, it often sympathizes with most of the demands of the Indians. So it was the lesser devil. Both the governments were devil, but it was the lesser devil in comparison to the Conservative Party. So now that Labour Party had come to power, Lord Ripon, he represented in a way, he in a way represented the Labour Party. Okay, so he brought in a lot of good things. He repealed most of the controversial decisions or most of the controversial acts being introduced by Lord Lytton. But during the reign of Lord Ripon, a very controversial thing happened, and that controversy came to be known as Ilbert Bill controversy. Ilbert Bill controversy. Today we will not talk about that controversy, but that controversy is believed to be the immediate reason. Okay, it is believed to be the immediate reason behind the formation of Indian National Congress in 1885. Okay, and by the way, Lord Lytton was also responsible, he also helped in the formation of Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in 1875, which later came to be known as Aligarh Muslim University. Okay. Now, let's talk about the extremist phase of Indian National Congress. Okay, what is the meaning of extremist phase of Indian National Congress? See, Indian National Congress, basically, it's not rocket science. Okay, extremist phase, basically, from the time of the formation, when Indian National Congress was formed, at the very outset, what kind of leaders were at the helm of Indian National Congress, or who were taking most of the decisions? Those leaders were known as moderates. Okay, only later they came to be known as moderates, but we call them moderate leaders who were handling Indian National Congress right from the very beginning. Okay, and the moderate phase, the moderate phase is said to have started from around 1885, because in 1885 Indian National Congress was formed, and the moderate phase is said to have lasted till 1905. From 1905 onwards, who overtook Indian National Congress by a huge degree? The extremists. Now, these are just names, these are just names we have given to leaders of Indian National Congress. So the first set of leaders of Indian National Congress is known as what? Is known as moderate leaders. The second set of leaders of Indian National Congress is known as, or the second generation of leaders of Indian National Congress is known as what? Extremist leaders. Okay. See, now extremist leaders, now there were certain characteristics of the extremist leaders which made them different from the moderate leaders. Otherwise, we would not be having two different words. Because there were certain characteristics or the features of the extremist leaders, the way they operated, okay, their modus operandi was completely different. Okay, their mentality, their perception, okay, their outlook towards the British rule, everything was completely different from that of the moderate leaders. Okay, which is why it is very, very interesting, it is very, very important for us to know about the extremist phase of Indian National Congress. Okay. So, see, first of all, we need to know the causes behind the rise of extremism. First and foremost, the extremist leaders were not happy with the modus operandi of the moderate leaders. Okay, the moderate leaders, how did they used to operate? The moderate leaders, see, first and foremost, you have to know that the moderate leaders, who were these leaders? Who were the moderate leaders? They mostly belong from the upper class. They mostly were from the upper, most of the moderate leaders, they were from the upper class sections. Okay, they were from the upper class sections of the society. Most of the moderate leaders, and all of them were Western educated. On top of that, they had a belief in the British sense of justice. What did they believe? They believed that India was not yet ready for self-government. So by the time India gets ready for self-government, it is very important that India is being ruled by the British, because only through British rule Indians will realize, okay, only through British rule Indians will learn about self-government. So it was very important for the British to rule over India before Indians themselves start ruling over themselves. That was the outlook, or that was the mentality of the moderate leaders. Now we are not going to talk about the characteristics of moderate leaders, that's a different thing. And so just because they had this mentality, I'm not calling them bad. Okay, they were not bad, because the moderate phase, the moderate leaders also had made a lot of contributions. The biggest contribution is the what? Economic critique of the British rule. Okay, Dadabhai Naoroji. Okay, he wrote this wonderful, he gave us this wonderful work by the name of Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Okay, which exposed the inhuman way, the Britishers were ruling in India, and in this particular work he gave the theory of drain of wealth, how the Britishers were taking away all the wealth out of India, and in return India was not getting anything. Okay, so they have made a lot of contributions. But at the same time, we cannot deny the fact that they had a faith. They used to believe in the British sense of justice. So they could not be as aggressive. As the extremists. And because they had a belief in the British sense of justice, so what was their modus operandi? The modus operandi, they used to operate through prayers, petitions and memorandums. But the extremists were not very happy. Okay, they were not very okay with these methods. And tomorrow extremist leaders like Aurobindo Ghosh, he was a very, very famous extremist leader. Okay, an extremist leader, or most of the extremist leaders, they used to call the moderate politics as politics of mendicancy. Okay, they used to call moderate politics as politics of mendicancy. Mendicancy is what? Mendicant is a person. Mendicant is just another word for beggar. So they criticize the moderate politics as being, okay, they criticize the moderate politics as being the politics of mendicancy. That is, why do we need to beg something from the Britishers when everything in India belongs to us? Okay, that was the mentality of the extremists. Now let's focus on some of the most important characteristics and features of the extremists. Or before doing that, let's find out what led to the rise of extremism. Okay, see, the failure of the moderates, they were not okay, they were not happy with the kind of, they were not happy with the kind of concessions and reforms that were happening in India via the moderate leaders. So like I said, they were not happy with their methods. Okay, secondly, like I said, there were a lot of famines happening. Okay, there were a lot of famines happening. On top of that, Plagues were also happening. The plague of Deccan is a case in point. The plague of Deccan, which happened towards the towards the very last of the 19th century, in around 1896-97. Okay, a plague had hit Deccan, especially the modern day state of Maharashtra, and we have spoken about this incident before also in one of my previous sessions. How Japekar brothers, how they assassinated Ayers and W.C. Rand. Okay, who were these two people? They were the plague commissioners. Now, so all these things were happening, so they were frustrated, and I've already spoken about the number of famines that were taking place in India. So every time a famine happened, it took a toll, it took a great toll on the lives of people. See, now certain international events also gave the extremists a lot of confidence, and those two international events were, number one, okay, Ethiopia, a very small country, had defeated Italy, one of the European powers. That happened around 1896-97. Okay, Ethiopia defeated Italy. Okay, Ethiopia is an African country. Okay, Italy is an European country. It defeated Italy. And in 1905, Japan, another small country at that point in time, okay, Japan defeated Russia, a mighty European power. And what was the result of these two international events? What was the result? It shattered the myth of European invincibility. It shattered the myth of European invincibility. There was a false notion that Europeans were invincible. They cannot be defeated. According to historian Bipin Chandra, he says that the pillar of the British rule, okay, he says that the British rule was founded on two pillars. Okay, he tells us that the British rule was founded on two pillars. One was the pillar of benevolence and the other was the pillar of invincibility. Okay, benevolence mane ki ami tumalokor bhalor karone ahisu yale. Okay, all these theories were being promoted. They were floated by the Britishers to justify their rule over Indians. Benevolence. How did this myth of benevolence, how did it get shattered for the first time? It got shattered for the first time when people like Dadabhai Naoroji came up with the economic critique. Okay, that is when people came to know that Britishers are not as good as they claim to be, because they are battering, they are hurting India economically. They are taking away all the wealth out of India, and in return we are not getting anything, absolutely nothing. So this was one of the two pillars. Okay, this pillar was the pillar of what? This pillar was the pillar of benevolence. Now I am talking about another pillar, invincibility. Okay, how did this pillar get affected? This pillar got affected by these international events, like for example when Ethiopia lost Italy and when Russia, okay, it got defeated at the hands of Japan. Both were European powers, Russia and Italy. So it gave a lot of confidence to Indians, and it gave a lot of confidence to these leaders who later came to be known as extremists. Okay, they thought that if these two small countries could defeat two major European powers, why cannot we do something similar? Why cannot we do something similar? Okay, so these two international events are very, very important. And obviously, the immediate cause for the rise of extremism was Lord Curzon, because like Lord Lytton, he was also an imperialist and he tried to strike. Okay, he did not miss a single opportunity to strike at the very roots of Indian nationalism. Okay, for example, he brought about many acts. Okay, for example, he tried to reduce the representation of Indians in the municipal bodies. He introduced another act by the name of Indian University Act. What was the intention of that particular act? By introducing that particular act, he brought all the universities under pure government control. And why did he bring this act? Okay, why did he try to control the universities? Because universities at that point in time were becoming hotbeds. They were becoming centers of nationalism. Okay, students were preaching ideas of nationalism. They were trying to inspire other students as to why you should fight the British rule. They were trying to create awareness among the other Indians. So when Lord Curzon came to know about this, that universities are being used Okay, universities are being used to propagate ideas of nationalism. It was then that he brought this act into play. Okay, so due to these controversial decisions, he also brought another act. Okay, he also brought another act by the name of, see, this is the Universities Act of 1904. He also passes the Calcutta Corporation Act. And he did this, why? He wanted to reduce the representation of Indians in this particular body. Then the Universities Act of 1904, and he brought into effect another act by the name of the Sedition Act and the Official Secrets Act. Okay, now let's talk about the main objectives of the extremists. The extremists they wanted what? Now, what was the objective? What was the objective of the moderates? The objective was the moderates was not to throw the yoke of the British rule, but to convince the Britishers to introduce certain reforms in India. To convince the Britishers to introduce certain reforms. The moderates were not against the British rule, but extremists were against the British rule. So what they demanded? Okay, what they demanded was Swaraj. What is the meaning of Swaraj? That is also very, very interesting. The meaning of Swaraj, self-government. So the meaning of Swaraj can also be differently interpreted. In fact, it was differently interpreted by, even within the ranks of the extremist leaders, this word was interpreted differently by different leaders. For example, for Tilak, okay, for Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who is one of the greatest extremists, he has also been titled as the father of Indian unrest. Okay, he was one of the most important extremist leaders. According to Tilak, okay, Tilak interpreted Swaraj as what? As self-government within the overall paramountcy of the British. But for other extremist leaders like Aurobindo Ghosh, Swaraj meant what? Swaraj meant total independence. Okay, Swaraj meant total independence. But for most of the extremist leaders, okay, what was the most accepted interpretation of Swaraj? According to most extremist leaders, Swaraj for them meant what? Swaraj for them meant self-government within the overall control of the British Empire. Self-government. Okay, self-government, but within the overall control of the British Empire. Okay. See the methods used by the extremists. Okay, the methods. What was their modus operandi? Their methods including, for example, boycott. Okay, their methods included boycott. Their methods also included rallies. Okay, rallies, boycotts, hunger strikes, industrial strikes. All these were their methods. So their methods were not, okay, in the 21st century standard, those were not undemocratic, but they were just a bit different from the methods being adopted by the moderates. And the moderates were also not wrong in their own place. Okay, so the extremists were also not wrong in their own place. See, promotion of Swadeshi and boycott. Okay, see, and the greatest role being played by when did the extremist leaders, okay, when did they come to the fore? When did they come to limelight? Okay, the extremist leaders came to limelight when partition of Bengal was announced by Lord Curzon in 1904. When partition of Bengal was announced in 1904, which was which was effectuated in 1905, that is when the extremist leaders came to limelight, because they started a movement by the name of what? They started a movement by the name of Swadeshi and boycott movement, where they tried to see when Lord Curzon announced the partition of Bengal, that led to a wide range of protests. From most of the parts of Bengal, both eastern Bengal as well as western part of the Bengal. It led to a wide range of protests, and all these protests, okay, so who took the leadership role in this particular movement, which was against the British decision to partition Bengal? The leadership was taken by the extremist leaders. Okay, and they started a movement wherein they focused on what? Swadeshi and boycott. They started boycotting British goods at the same time. At the same time, why did they start boycotting the British goods? Because they wanted to hurt, they wanted to attack the economy of the British. The way they were attacking the economy of India. When you have to destroy a civilization, okay, there's a very famous thing. Whenever you want to destroy a civilization, you have to attack the very backbone, that is the economy of that civilization, or that the economy of that particular culture. Okay, so having learned it the bad way, they were now trying to reverse. They were now trying to turn the table. They were now trying to turn the table on the British. So they came up with a strategy by the name of Swadeshi, wherein they tried to. So they on the one hand, they started boycotting British goods. So now that they have started boycotting British goods, they would need something. Okay, they would need some alternatives. So they started encouraging what? They started encouraging the domestic industries. Okay, they started promoting the domestic industries, not just domestic industries. Okay, even it led to a what? Even it led to the development of indigenous art and culture. Okay, for example, we can give the example of the famous Bengal School of Art, which developed under the leadership of none other than Abanindranath Tagore. Okay, which developed under the leadership of none other than Abanindranath Tagore. So, I mean, he played a very important role. Okay, for example, Aurobindo Ghosh. Okay, Aurobindo Ghosh also came up with a body. Okay, Aurobindo Ghosh also came up with a body related to education, which later became NCERT. It was all happening around this time. It was around this time that Rabindranath Tagore, it was around this time that he came up with the idea of Shantiniketan. Okay, he came up with the idea of Shantiniketan. Everything was happening around this time. See, now, okay, what did I say just now? Was the partition of Bengal movement, which is also known as what? Which is also known as Swadeshi and boycott movement. And many extremist leaders came to limelight during this particular movement, like for example Bipin Chandra Pal, okay, Aurobindo Ghosh, okay, Tilak. They all came to limelight during this particular movement, and they played a very, very important role. Okay, they played a very, very important role. Now, so another important feature of the extremists was what? Another important feature of the extremists was that they did not take inspiration from the Western culture. The moderates, they took inspiration from the Western culture because they were Western educated. Okay, they had some amount of fondness for the Western culture. But these extremist leaders, they were taking inspiration from India's glorious past. Okay, they were taking inspiration from India's glorious past. Okay, for example, Tilak wrote a book by the name of Gita Rahasya. Okay, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he wrote another book, okay, wherein he tried to talk about the Aryan migration theory. Okay, how the Aryans came from the Arctic. Okay, so all these indicate what? Okay, for example, Aurobindo Ghosh, for the first time, he tried to give a sentimental touch to nationalism by comparing the nation with the mother. Okay, so all these things indicate what? All these things indicate that the extremist leaders were people who used to take a great amount of pride in the ancient past of India. Okay, so this is also one of the features of the extremists. And because they were taking pride in the ancient, okay, they were taking pride in the glorious past of India. Okay, because they were doing that, it also got reflected in the developments that were happening in India at that point in time. Okay, that is what I said a short while ago. That is promotion of indigenous art and culture, promotion of indigenous industries. Okay. See, Lala Lajpat Rai was also there. He played a very, very important role. Now let's talk about the carrot and stick approach. Okay, now let's talk about the carrot and stick approach. See, carrot and stick approach basically, it is an approach. Okay, it is an approach being adopted by the British. Okay, carrot and stick approach is an approach which was adopted by the British to divide the Indians. Okay, it was, we all know about the famous British policy of divide and rule. So carrot and stick approach is just another name for that. So basically now, the revolt of 1857, it came as a great shock for the Britishers. They were not expecting something like this. They were not at all expecting something like this. So it came as a great shock for the Britishers. After revolt of 1857, jolted them out of their deep sleep. They started contemplating on dividing the Indians. Okay, and at the same time, the Indian nationalism was also getting built up. Okay, nationalistic feelings were also getting built up among the Indians, and nationalistic feelings go directly against the idea of imperialism and colonialism. So no colonial power will allow this to happen. No colonial power will allow nationalistic feelings to get developed in its colony. So I'm now talking about the Indian colony. So because these had started getting developed, so now the Britishers were contemplating, they were thinking about dividing the people. Okay, now let's talk about carrot and stick approach. See, now carrot and stick approach. So carrot here means what? Carrot here means reward, and stick here means punishment. Okay, carrot here means reward and stick here means punishment. Certain people were given rewards, okay, to win over them, and certain people were suppressed and repressed. Okay, they were subdued very, very harshly. Okay, now let's talk about the very first instance when this particular approach was being taken. Now see, a short while ago we were talking about the partition of Bengal movement. Now partition of Bengal movement, okay, all these extremist leaders that we were talking about, okay, be it Bal Gangadhar Tilak, be it Aurobindo Ghosh. So the Britishers, the Britishers came upon them very, very severely. Okay, the Britishers came upon them very, very severely. So what happened? Okay, what happened due to that? So the Britishers, they took a very strict approach towards whom? The Britishers, they took a very strict approach towards the extremists. Okay, they took a very strict approach towards the extremist leaders and towards the moderate leaders. So already in 1907, okay, Surat split. Okay, Surat split, it basically refers to a split which had occurred in Indian National Congress between extremists and moderates in the Surat session of Indian National Congress, which took place in 1907. And many scholars say that Surat split was also engineered by the British. Okay, it was the brainchild of the British. They were the mastermind behind the Surat split. That's a different thing. So after that happened, so now they started coming down heavily. on the extremist leaders. Okay, be it Bal Gangadhar Tilak. For example, Tilak was sent for 6 years imprisonment. Okay, to Mandalay jail in Burma. He was sent for 6 years imprisonment. Okay, Aurobindo Ghosh, the British reaction was so severe towards Aurobindo Ghosh that Aurobindo Ghosh was convinced that I can no longer be in politics. He left politics for good and he went to Pondicherry. Okay, Aurobindo Ashram is a very famous place of Pondicherry. So this is the stick approach that was taken by the Britishers during the partition of Bengal movement. Okay, this was the stick approach being taken by the Britishers during the partition of Bengal movement. Then what was the carrot approach? Carrot, like I said, meant what? Rewards. So the rewards at the end of this movement, the rewards were given to moderates, and the reward was what? The reward was Morley Minter reforms of 1909. Okay, the rewards were Morley Minter reforms of 1909, and in 1911, Lord Hardinge, okay, he declared the annulment or the cancellation of partition of Bengal. He declared the annulment or the cancellation of the partition of Bengal. At the same time, he also decided to shift the capital from Calcutta to Delhi in 1911. Lord Hardinge. So all these have to be seen as what? Rewards. All these have to be seen as rewards being given to whom? Being given to moderates. Okay. On the other hand, they were very, 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 very severe and harsh towards the extremist leaders. Okay. Now Let's talk about the second instance when this particular carrot and stick approach became very, very visible. The second instance was after the end of the First World War, which started from around 1914 and which ended on 11th of November 1918. Now during the course of the World War, the Indian political leaders, were expecting many reforms. They were expecting many reforms and many good things for the Indians. Why? Because a lot of Indians were participating. A lot of Indians were fighting on behalf of the British during the course of the First World War. So it was only natural for the Indians to expect certain good things for the Indians after the end of the First World War. But what the Indians got was a carrot and stick approach. Now, what was the stick approach? Let's first talk about the stick approach. The stick approach in this case was the Rowlatt Committee. The Britishers appointed a Rowlatt Committee, a committee under Justice Rowlatt. And this committee was being appointed by the British to do what? This committee was being appointed by the British to investigate and to study the revolutionary activities which were growing mainly in two provinces of India. Those two provinces were Bengal and Punjab. So this particular committee was constituted under Justice Rowlatt, and Justice Rowlatt, he came up with certain findings, and the two most important findings of this committee were: number one, he said that the Indian revolutionaries, because revolutionary activities were on a rise, so he said that Indian revolutionaries had a direct connection with the German army. And please remember, Germany was on the other side of Germany was fighting against the British in the First World War. So Germany was like an enemy of the Allied forces. So Germany, he said that the Indian revolutionaries have a direct connection with the German army. And the second finding which he said was that Indian revolutionaries were inspired by Russian Bolsheviks. I'm talking about the Bolshevik Revolution or the Russian Revolution of 1917. So these two were the findings. Based on these two findings, he also came up with, based on these two findings, in order to prevent these things, or in order to curb, the Britishers said that Justice Rowlatt, he said that in order to curb these things, or in order to curb the revolutionary trend which is growing, we need to bring about a set of laws. So he recommended those laws, and those laws were accepted by the Governor General of India, which came to be known as the Rowlatt Act, which was passed in 1919. This Rowlatt Act was highly controversial. Certain provisions of this Rowlatt Act include: number one, there were certain emergency provisions which were going on. When during the course of the First World War, there were certain emergency provisions going on in India. Now, according to the Rowlatt Act, those emergency provisions would continue. They would continue even if now that the World War has ended. The First World War has ended, but it does not mean anything for India. In India, we will continue the emergency provisions. So in simple words, it meant what? It meant making the lives of Indians harder. Number two, another very controversial provision. It said that any person being suspected of revolutionary activities, will be imprisoned. Any person suspected of revolutionary activities will be imprisoned for a minimum number of 2 years without any trial. Without any trial. At the same time, another provision, it also allowed torturing. It also allowed torture, and it also made certain changes to the Evidence Act, which was for the first time passed in the 19th century. It has also, extended, the Evidence Act. So all they were trying to do was teach a lesson to the revolutionaries. Now, in order to teach a lesson to the revolutionaries, they would be needing more evidences. So now they have expanded the Evidence Act so that they can catch more and more revolutionaries. They can mete out the harshest of punishments to them. So with that intention, they have also made changes to the Evidence Act. These were some of the most controversial provisions of the Rowlatt Act, and it was in opposition to this act. Okay, it was in opposition to this act that Gandhiji started something known as Rowlatt Satyagraha, and the rest is history. Okay, we know that led to what? That led to the very, very unfortunate and tragic incident of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So that was the stick, and what was the carrot here? The carrot was the Morley Minto. See, I'm so sorry. The carrot was the Montego-Chelmsford Reforms, or the Government of India Act 1919, under which, okay, the Government of India Act 1919, under which, as we all know, councils were formed. Okay, for the first time, councils were formed at the provincial level. Okay, councils were formed at the provincial level, and okay, councils were formed at the provincial level, and now two lists were introduced. Okay, two lists were introduced. One was known as, this particular activity is known as diarchy. Diarchy was introduced. So councils were introduced at the provincial level, and then diarchy, a system was introduced under which two lists were introduced. Okay, one was known as reserved list and the other was known as transferred list. So there have to be what? Each of the provinces had their own governors. So as far as the reserve list was concerned, only the governor could take decisions on the subjects being mentioned in the reserve list. But as far as transferred list was concerned, it was said that the governor, before taking any decision on the items being mentioned in the transferred list, has to consult with whom? Has to consult with the Indian members, or has to consult with the representatives, or has to consult with the members of those councils who are basically Indians. So in a way, the Britishers tried to show that we are making more and more Indians a part of the decision making process, and we are taking significant steps towards what? We are taking significant steps towards giving you self-rule. But in reality, in hindsight, if you evaluate that particular system, diarchy, in reality, the councils did not have any power. In reality, governor was given the overriding powers. Okay, what is the meaning of overriding powers? If the governor wanted, he could brush aside the opinions of the members of those councils. Okay, so just for the sake of giving opinions, okay, their opinions, the members of those councils did not have significant amount of power to stop the governor from doing something. They were just what? It was just like they were giving suggestions, and it was up to the governor whether to accept those suggestions or not. And he had overriding powers. He had every right to what? Overrule those suggestions. Okay, so this is the stick and carrot approach which was adopted by the Britishers to divide Indians. Okay, to divide Indians so that they can curb the nationalistic feeling. See, okay, we'll be ending today's discussion with a very short but very, very important strategy which was used by Mahatma Gandhi, and the name of that strategy was struggle-truce-struggle. Okay, struggle-truce-struggle by Mahatma Gandhi. See, what is the meaning of struggle-truce-struggle? We all know the meaning of struggle. So Mahatma Gandhi was of the opinion. That, see, Mahatma Gandhi is famous for what? Mahatma Gandhi is basically famous for taking the Indian national movement. He did not just make it a mass movement. See, mass movement started, even the Swadeshi movement was a mass movement, but it was not a rural movement. Gandhiji made the mass movements rural movements. Okay, that is one of the biggest contributions of Gandhiji. So basically what I'm trying to say is, so Gandhiji was of the opinion that the Indian masses, he had immense faith in the Indian masses. Gandhiji had immense faith in the Indian masses. But he also knew that the Indian masses would not be able to continue a struggle forever. So they have to be given intermittent, they have to be given breaks at times. They have to be given breaks, they have to be given recess, they have to be given intervals. And during those periods of intervals, okay, those periods of intervals or those periods of breaks are known as what? Truce. Struggle is the time of what? Struggle is the time of fighting the British. Truce is the time when you need to consolidate the gains. Okay, when you need to consolidate, okay, when you need to consolidate the gains which you have achieved at the same time. Okay, for example, struggle was what? Okay, let's take an example. Struggle was non-cooperation movement. Okay, struggle was non-cooperation movement, and Gandhiji in 1922 he called off the movement. Okay, he called off the movement until he launched another movement by the name of civil disobedience movement in 1930. So the entire period starting from 1922 till 1930 can be called the period of what? Truce. Now what was Gandhiji doing during this period of truce? Why was truce very, very important? Okay, truce was important because during this period gains were consolidated. At the same time awareness was being created. Okay, awareness was being created against the oppressions. Awareness was being created among the Indians. Awareness was being created. Indians were sensitized. Okay, Indians were sensitized about the bad effects of British rule. Indians were sensitized. More and more Indians were sensitized because there were many Indians who still believed in the efficacy and efficiency of British rule. So it was very important for Gandhiji to shatter the myth, to shatter those myths that British rule was good for India. Okay, that was the main objective behind what? That was the main objective behind the truce phase. And once that phase was over, okay, once Gandhiji was able to convince many Indians, not just Gandhiji, the other leaders of Indian National Congress, okay, all the leaders of INC were able to bring more and more Indians into the movement. Okay, when they were able to bring more Indians into the movement, now they were ready to launch another mass movement, a bigger mass movement. Okay, that was the idea, to mobilize more and more Indians. Okay, to mobilize more and more Indians, you need to take a break at times. Okay, this is the struggle, truce, struggle. And so, struggle, truce, struggle. So Gandhiji, he never launched any mass movement. Okay, his mass movements, okay, Gandhiji's mass movements were not supposed to last forever. Okay, Gandhiji's mass movements were not supposed to last forever. Okay, they were not supposed to last forever. So his mass movements, with the exception, as we all know, Gandhiji's is most, he fought, you know, he launched, there were three famous mass movements launched under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, and Quit India movement. Barring Quit India movement, the other two movements, NCM and CDM, okay, NCM and CDM totally reflected Gandhiji's strategy of struggle through struggle. Okay, QIM was a different, movement. The circumstances were different, and according to many scholars, Gandhiji by that time had come under the influence of socialism. And socialism said what? Socialist leaders who were present within the Indian National Congress, they were of a different opinion. They were not in favor of this opinion. Okay, but they were in the favor, they gave a different strategy. Okay, for example, Jawaharlal Nehru's strategy was what? Struggle, victory. He did not believe in the concept of truce, but that's a different thing. Okay, but how can we validate that struggle, truce, struggle indeed is a very effective technique? Because there's a person, there's a very famous, there's a very famous Italian strategist and philosopher. There's a very famous Italian strategist and philosopher by the name of Antonio Gramsci, and Antonio Gramsci has also talked about this particular struggle through struggle technique. He has validated, he talks in favor of this technique. Say Gandhiji was not inspired. Gandhiji did not take inspiration from Antonio Gramsci. It was only in the 1960s or 1950s that the works of Antonio Gramsci, they became popular in India. So Gandhiji did not have any kind of exposure to his works before that. Okay, moreover, he was not writing in English. His works got translated in, his works, Antonio Gramsci's works got translated in English much later. So this idea was an innovative idea of Gandhiji. I mean, of course, he was inspired by people like Leo Tolstoy. Okay, that's a different thing. Okay, he was inspired by people like Leo Tolstoy, and especially he was inspired by this book of Leo Tolstoy by the name of The Kingdom of Heaven. Okay, not the Kingdom of Heaven, but he talked about, so basically in that particular, Leo Tolstoy was such a person. Okay, Leo Tolstoy, The Kingdom of God, I'm so sorry, Leo Tolstoy was such a person. He preferred what? He preferred violence, or he preferred love over violence. Okay, he did not see the use of violence in achieving an objective. He said that if you want to achieve anything, okay, if you want to end oppression, even if you want to end oppression, war is not the solution. Violence is not the solution. Love is the solution. Love is the epicenter of everything. And by the way, Leo Tolstoy was a contemporary of Gandhiji. Okay, now he was indeed inspired by those people, but he was not inspired, according to scholars, by Antonio Gramsci. But Antonio Gramsci's this theory has become very, very popular. And Antonio Gramsci gave this theory in 1930s. He gave this theory for the first time in 1930s. It became available, or it became popular in India after India achieved their independence in the 1950s or 1960s. Now, according to Antonio Gramsci, he talks in favor of this particular strategy, struggle-truce strategy, and he tells us that struggle-truce-struggle, this particular strategy becomes very, very effective. It becomes very, very effective in such a scenario when people still have false notions. Okay, when people still have false notions about the about the enemy, when enemy lines are not clearly drawn. He says that when enemy lines are not clearly drawn, when there are many people who still have false notions about the enemy, who still believe, who still do not consider that particular group as their enemy, then the right strategy is what? Struggle-truce-struggle. Now, if we look at Gandhiji's struggle-truce-struggle in the light of what Antonio Gramsci has said, it makes complete sense, because during the British rule of India, there were many Indians who were not yet convinced that British rule was bad for Indians. There were many such Indians. So it was important for Gandhiji. So Gandhiji, he used this period truce to make them aware about the evil designs of the British rule. And only once those people, Gandhiji knew that only once the participation has to come from all the people. Okay, Gandhiji knew that it was a mass movement, and the true mass movement has to have the participation of all the people. So he used this period of truce to convince more and more people to come to his side. Okay, to sensitize them about the evil designs of the British rule. Okay, so this was a master, it was a master stroke. It was a master stroke of Gandhiji. Okay, so with that, we have come to an end of today's session. Okay, we have come to an end of today's session, and before wrapping it all up, okay, once again I'd like to share with you about, I'd like to tell you about the new initiative CSAP is bringing for all of you. Okay, we are launching full-length test. Okay, we are launching full-length test, and the speciality about this full-length test is that we will be conducting this full-length test exactly in the same time schedule of the upcoming APSC mains, as you can see here. Okay, as you can see here, same day, same time. And when are we conducting this? Okay, we are conducting this on 3 days, 17th, 18th June and 19th June. Okay, so as you can see, the timings are at par with the timings of the upcoming APSC mains, to give you guys the what? To give you guys the feel. Okay, to give you guys the feel. Okay, to give you guys the feel of writing APSC mains. Apart from this, we are also coming up. We have already started dedicated essay short YouTube videos. Okay, which will surely help you. Okay, these YouTube videos will last for around 10 to 15 minutes, and they will surely help you crack the APSC mains. Okay, they will surely help you crack the upcoming APSC mains. And apart from dedicated essay sessions, we are also introducing similar sessions on ethics. We are starting similar sessions on ethics. As we all know, essay and ethics are very, very important papers, and these two papers, according to me, are going to be the deciding factor this time, because we do not have optional papers. So you have to take these two papers very, very seriously, and if you follow these two videos, okay, if you follow these videos on ethics and essays regularly, we can guarantee that you will score very good marks in the upcoming APSC mains. Okay, and all you have to do to get the benefits, all you have to do is register with us. Okay, you can also call us in case of any queries. Please feel free to call us at 91275 15541. Okay, in case of any doubts, in case of any questions, please give us a call at 91275 15541. Okay, having said that, on that note, thank you so much. See you soon.